imagine reaching like the absolute pinnacle of spiritual enlightenment. You've done the work, shed your earthly attachments, achieved total nirvana, and ascended to the highest celestial plane.
Right. The ultimate goal.
Exactly. Only to find out you have to report to a boss, clock in from one of 10 designated continents, and fill out official paperwork just to visit Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Usually when we talk about theology or the afterlife or, ultimate spiritual states, we get these sweeping, abstract, poetic concepts. We hear about boundless light, a profound sense of peace dissolving into the universal consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is undeniably beautiful, but it is rarely a detailed schematic.
Well, yeah. The descriptions in most major traditions, they're designed to evoke a feeling of transcendence, right? Rather than provide a literal logistical blueprint. You almost never find a spiritual text that maps out the heavens with the rigorous precision of an organizational chart.
But today, for you listening, we are opening a source text that does exactly that. We're jumping into a deep dive on an excerpt from a 2006 document by an author and spiritual teacher named Zwifting.
Right.
The piece is titled Celestial Cultivation Chapter, Article 1. And Zwifting is the founder of a modern spiritual movement called Lifechanyuan. So our mission today is to map out his incredibly specific, almost encyclopedic taxonomy of the afterlife.
It really is encyclopedic.
It is. We're going to look at the intricate, honestly surprising differences between two ultimate spiritual states that this text outlines: super celestial beings and the Buddhas.
Yeah.
Now, as we navigate this, our goal isn't to endorse these viewpoints or validate this specific religious framing. We are simply acting as your guides, exploring the fascinating architecture of the cosmos, exactly as it's laid out in this unique source material.
And to understand the massive divide between these two states, we first need to establish what they actually share. Because according to Zwifting's cosmology, super celestial beings and Buddhas, they start from a very similar foundational premise.
Okay.
They are both described as the highly evolved forms of angels, and both are the direct creations of the greatest creator, which is the central divine figure in this text.
Okay.
And both of them represent the absolute highest state of existence that human beings can attain through spiritual cultivation.
So they are both the absolute pinnacle. Like if you're a human being, this is the highest ceiling you can
Yeah,
have.
exactly. The text goes further to say they both reside in a supreme realm called the Elysium world, and they both possess immense supernatural abilities.
It includes physical transformation, right?
Yeah, notably the power of physical transformation. So if you were just, glancing at this spiritual map from a distance, you might assume they're functionally identical, like two different cultural terms for the exact same ultimate cosmic achievement.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that shared baseline is exactly where the text completely flips the script. You see the Elysium world, the supernatural powers, the pinnacle of human evolution, and it looks like a single unified destination.
Right.
But the text outlines a massive structural divide between the two. And it all begins with the bureaucracy of enlightenment. We move from these shared supreme states into a wildly different set of rules regarding how they actually live and operate in eternity.
It's so interesting. It essentially boils down to a dichotomy between absolute freedom and intense structural hierarchy. The text measures this first through the concept of ranks.
Yeah.
So super celestial beings, they have only one rank. There's no ladder to climb, no hierarchy to navigate. A super celestial being is simply a super celestial being.
Right.
But Buddhas, on the other hand, exist within a highly stratified system. There are 10 distinct ranks of Buddhas.
Wait, 10 ranks immediately implies a chain of command. I mean, it implies subordinates and superiors. And that structure doesn't just stop at their titles, it extends to their cosmic real estate.
Yes, the bases.
Exactly. The text states that super celestial beings have a single, unified base of operations. It's called the Celestial Islands continent. But the Buddhas have 10 entirely different bases scattered across the Elysium world.
Yeah, and the author actually lists them out, which is what gives this text such a tangible geographical feel.
Oh, go ahead and read those off.
Okay, so the bases for the Buddhas are the Lotus continent, the Borneo continent, the Kasyapa continent, the Yingwu continent.
Wow, that is specific.
Very.
Okay.
And the Amida Buddha continent, the Celestial Islands continent, which they apparently share with the super celestial beings.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Then there's the three realms transit continent, the Moon Temple continent, the Gods continent, and finally the Supreme Enlightenment continent.
That is just a massive physical distribution.
Yeah, and that vast physical distribution mirrors the strict regulations governing their daily existence. The text explicitly states that supercelestial beings are completely free and unrestrained.
Totally free.
Totally. They can travel as they please, and they can freely transform into human forms whenever they choose. But Buddhas are the complete opposite. They are bound by divine laws and must strictly adhere to heavenly precepts.
And what caught me completely off guard were the transformation rules. Like if a Buddha wants to transform into a human form, say, to interact with the earthly plane, they can't just do it.
Right. They need permission.
Yes, they have to be officially dispatched by the heavenly realm. The text specifically warns that if a Buddha transforms on their own, without that official heavenly dispatch, it actively violates heavenly laws.
It's a huge deal.
So think about the analogy here. Super celestial beings are essentially independently wealthy freelancers.
Right.
You know, they have no boss, they have one incredible home base on the Celestial Islands continent, and they just roam the cosmos doing whatever they want.
Transforming whenever they feel like it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Buddhas, on the other hand, are like high-ranking corporate executives. They have massive status, they have corner offices on 10 different continents, but they are bound by intense bureaucracy. They are swimming in red tape and company policy.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to look at it.
But why? Why would the status of Buddha, which in our earthly culture is arguably the most famous concept of ultimate liberated enlightenment, come with so much cosmic red tape?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text offers a very nuanced theological explanation for this hierarchy. Shui Feng's underlying logic is that supercelestial beings are technically a subcategory of Buddhas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. However, they are a very specific exception to the rule. They are a category that's fundamentally unconstrained by divine power. The author notes that while a supercelestial being is a Buddha, not all Buddhas are supercelestial beings.
Ah, squares and rectangles.
Exactly. Because of their unrestrained status, supercelestial beings do not have to worship other Buddhas. They exist entirely outside the traditional chain of reverence, obedience, and command that governs the rest of the Buddha realm.
Okay, so they're part of the club, but they have somehow opted out of the entire hierarchical structure. But, to enforce a system of 10 corporate bases and strict transformation rules, the creator clearly doesn't just let anyone into that specific Buddha hierarchy.
No, definitely not.
Which brings us to the demographics of the divine. How does a human actually become one of these ultimate beings? Because the text gets incredibly specific about the entry criteria, and it paints two very different pictures.
It really does. So the path to becoming a supercelestial being is extremely broad. The text states that they can emerge from among Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and ordinary people alike.
It's very open.
Very. It's presented as a universal, cross-cultural spiritual opportunity. Regardless of your earthly religious label or background, the path to becoming a free-roaming, supercelestial being is theoretically open to you.
But then we look at the criteria for becoming a Buddha, and the text draws a massive boundary. It states that only the descendants of the dragon have the potential to become Buddhas.
Yeah, that's a huge shift.
And the author clarifies exactly what that means. He defines descendants of the dragon not just as the Chinese, but as all Eastern peoples. And, get this, the text goes out of its way to explicitly exclude the descendants of Adam and Eve.
Which is a profound theological distinction. The text is basically proposing two parallel tracks of ultimate spiritual evolution. The supercelestial beings represent a globalized, universal spiritual path.
Right.
While the path to Buddhahood is depicted as exclusively Eastern, it's a geographically and genealogically locked destiny.
I have to question the logic of that exclusivity. A text dealing with the greatest creator, a being who supposedly engineered the entire cosmos, creating such strict earthly borders for spiritual outcomes just seems counterintuitive.
It does seem a bit contradictory.
Right. Why would an infinite cosmos care about the geographic coordinates of your ancestors? You have a universal creator with a universally accessible path, alongside a highly restricted, region-locked path.
Well, Shui Feng's logic here relies on the idea that earthly lineages aren't merely biological, they're cosmic blueprints. In this theology, the descendants of the dragon and the descendants of Adam and Eve represent entirely different spiritual starting lines designed by the creator. So the idea is that the specific energetic or ancestral heritage rooted in the East is a prerequisite for the specific cosmic path of the Buddha.
So you literally need it to even start.
Yeah. The universal path is available to all because it requires a different kind of spiritual refinement. But the Buddha path requires a specific foundational lineage.
So your DNA essentially dictates which afterlife corporate ladder you're even allowed to climb.
Basically, yeah. And that tension over who gets to climb which ladder sets up the most complex dynamic in the entire text. Because we've established that supercelestial beings have total freedom, they come from broader universal backgrounds, and they bypass the 10-rank hierarchy entirely.
Right.
So on paper, they have the absolute best deal in the universe.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text introduces a massive twist regarding who actually holds the ultimate power in the Elysium world, and it all comes down to their cosmic history.
Yes.
The text states a very simple difference between the two. Supercelestial beings have never lost their way. But Buddhas, however, have at one time lost their way.
And that historical difference dictates their ongoing relationship with the greatest creator. Because the supercelestial beings have never strayed, the text describes them as the most beloved beings of the creator. They're pure and steadfast.
Okay.
But Buddhas have a history of losing their way, which is exactly why they are subject to strict control. This explains the intense bureaucracy we discussed earlier.
Guardrails.
Exactly. The 10 ranks, the 10 separate continents, the inability to transform without being officially dispatched. It is all a divine mechanism of control over beings who have proven they have the capacity to wander off the path. The Creator loves the supercelestial beings, but the Creator manages the Buddhas.
Which makes logical sense from an administrative standpoint. You put guardrails around the ones who get lost.
Yeah.
You give total freedom to the ones who always do exactly what they're supposed to do.
Right.
But here is the power paradox that just blew my mind. Even though supercelestial beings are pure, even though they have never strayed, and even though they are the most beloved by the Creator, they do not attain the ultimate power.
What's fascinating here is the underlying spiritual philosophy regarding limitation. The text is very clear that supercelestial beings do not attain the supreme wisdom and capabilities inherent in the highest Buddha nature.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Despite all their freedom and divine favor, supercelestial beings remain merely angels. They are permanently subject to the commands of the gods.
Wow.
But the Buddhas, the heavily regulated bureaucratic Buddhas who actually failed and lost their way in the past, the text says that at their highest level, Buddhas can almost rival the gods.
That is wild.
Yeah. The text rewards the beings who lost their way with a significantly higher ultimate power ceiling than the perfectly obedient beings.
It's like the cosmic version of the idea that a broken bone heals stronger at the break.
That is a great way to put it. The Buddhas are heavily constrained by divine laws. But the text implies that navigating that constraint is the forge. The struggle of losing their way, finding it again, and enduring the discipline of grinding up a rigid 10-rank hierarchy, it builds a capacity that uninterrupted perfection simply cannot access. So the supercelestial beings, who never had to struggle through that structured redemption, they never unlock that level of supreme capability. They get a beautiful, beloved existence, but with a hard cap on their potential.
Perfect freedom with capped power versus intense restriction with unlimited potential. It is a wild trade-off.
It really is.
Now, after laying out this massive, incredibly intricate cosmic architecture, the corporate continents, the ancestral requirements, the power dynamics, the text has to ground itself in reality, because what does the author, Zuifeng, actually want someone to do with this information?
Right. So Zuifeng concludes the excerpt with very practical advice for his readers. Essentially, life hacks for navigating the afterlife.
I love a good afterlife life hack.
He warns that attaining Buddhahood is exceedingly difficult. Because of that, his advice to Easterners, who remember are the only ones eligible for Buddhahood in his framework, is to drastically manage their expectations. He advises them not to expect to ascend to the highest realm in a single leap. Instead, they should first strive toward an intermediate realm he calls the 1,000-year world.
A 1,000-year world. What is that exactly?
It's described functionally as a millennial transitional realm. It's a place where souls must spend 1,000 years shedding their residual earthly attachments and purifying their consciousness before they're even allowed to approach the ultimate states of the Elysium world.
Little waiting room.
Exactly. It's a mandatory, massive buffer zone. And Zuifeng gives similar advice to ordinary people aiming to become supercelestial beings. He says they shouldn't expect to just jump straight onto the celestial island's continent either.
Right.
They need to start by following the path of the sages and then, like the others, progress into that 1,000-year world to do the slow work of purification.
The general advice for humanity is take it slow, do the grueling work, and prepare for a 1,000-year layover.
Essentially, yes.
But then, there is a massive exception to the rule. The author provides a highly specific instruction for members of his own movement, Lifechanyuan.
Yeah, the text singles out his followers directly. It states that because the members of Lifechanyuan have a guide, presumably Su Feng himself or the teachings of the organization, they are instructed to bypass the slow route entirely.
Just skip it.
Yeah, skip it entirely. They're told they shouldn't aim for the 1,000-year world. Instead, they must devote themselves wholeheartedly to becoming super celestial beings immediately.
So what does this all mean? The text is essentially giving its specific in-group a spiritual VIP fast pass.
Yeah.
It's a cosmic cheat code.
It really is.
After spending the entire text outlining this beautiful, terrifyingly complex, eons-long journey of spiritual evolution, the 10 ranks, the ancestral prerequisites, the 1,000-year buffer zones, the author turns to his immediate audience and says, "You guys are with me, so you can go straight to the front of the line." He even warns them that this is a rare opportunity, and if they miss it, the chance to become a super celestial being might be lost forever.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a fascinating reflection of our human obsession with optimization. Even when we're contemplating eternity, discussing the highest possible states of cosmic evolution, we are still looking for the shortcut.
We always want the express lane.
We really do. The desire to bypass the struggle is so deeply ingrained in us that it finds its way into maps of the infinite. It grounds this massive, otherworldly vision in a very recognizable, highly pragmatic human dynamic.
Even in the afterlife, it pays to know the guy at the door.
Right.
Well, let's pull back and recap what we've unpacked today. We have looked at a highly detailed, surprisingly bureaucratic taxonomy of spiritual evolution. Xu Feng's text maps out the cosmos with the precision of a corporate ledger.
It really does.
We have the free-roaming, universally accessible, super-celestial beings who are beloved by the Creator, but fundamentally capped in their power. And we have the heavily regulated, ancestrally locked Buddhas who lost their way, are strictly controlled across 10 continents, but possess the ultimate potential to rival the gods themselves.
Yeah.
And woven through all of this is the very human promise of a shortcut for the initiated.
It serves as a profound thought experiment, really. It strips away the vague poetry of enlightenment and replaces it with tangible rules, asking us to consider the mechanical relationship between freedom, discipline, perfection, and power.
Which leaves us with a final question for you to mull over. If you found yourself navigating this exact spiritual cosmos, looking at this map, what would you choose?
It's a tough choice.
Would you prefer the path of the super celestial being? Perfect freedom, unrestricted travel across the universe, and the beloved favor of the Creator, but knowing there's a permanent ceiling on your power and wisdom? Or would you choose the grueling path of the Buddha? Bound by strict laws, forced to climb 10 hierarchical ranks, constantly monitored and restricted, but possessing the ultimate hard-won potential to rival the gods themselves. Think about it. Is true enlightenment ultimately found in absolute freedom or absolute power?